fireside here with a cup of coffee. Did you know that New Zealanders call themselves Kiwis because of an awesome bird that's from here? I always thought it was because of the kiwi fruit. I'm in New Zealand and it is August. It is the middle of winter here. So I'm all cuddled up next to an awesome fireplace, super warm, before I head out with my girls for an epic snowboarding and skiing day. I'm feeling a lot of love and support from you all and my family and friends. So I'm about to be the most vulnerable I've ever been in my life. And I will share a story about me going to jail. But first, if you want to learn to control alcohol and get free tips and coaching from me and other awesome coaches from around the world on how to live an incredible life while being alcohol free, then be sure to start now by subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss a thing, and join in on live Zoom group coaching calls at wearetheafr.org. That's wearetheafr.org. To find out whether my program is right for you or not, check the description below. There's all kinds of jingling going on. It's like Christmas sounds here. I love it in August. Please ask any questions you have in the comments so I can answer them on a future episode. We are with you. You will never walk alone. Now, to be extremely vulnerable with you. I grew up really poor in the Midwest, but I went on to become a male model, the doctorate in psychology, got that when I was like in my 30s. I was very fortunate and retired 2 years ago by investing in income properties around the United States. And once upon a time, Ryan Seacrest handpicked me to be the LA shrink. I have lived all over the world in some of the most beautiful and exotic places known to man. Oh, and I also married a gorgeous and intelligent woman, and she and I have 2 beautiful, smart daughters. I'm not telling you all this at all to brag. I'm telling you this to warn you. Despite deeply appreciating everything I had, I still almost threw it all away, and so much more. After years of what most people would call social, moderate drinking, I became addicted to alcohol. The irony is, I knew better. I knew exactly the kind of damage and violence that comes from alcohol. The addiction. Throughout my childhood, I watched my father become addicted to alcohol and abuse my mother, verbally and physically. I swore I would never be like him, and yet still became addicted to alcohol and ended up behaving exactly like him, maybe even worse. Before now, I've never told anyone this story, except a few people, especially not social media, but it's time, and it starts like this. We were in Hawaii, my wife and I, we were drinking ice cold IPAs at a local happy hour, watching Monday Night Football. The exact same thing most Americans do every week during the season. Once the game ended, we continued drinking because why not? It's what you do, right? It's what we always did. And we were having fun. Later at home, my wife and I had about 3 glasses of red wine before capping off our night with a cocktail of whiskey over ice. Granted, this was more than we usually drank, especially on Mondays, but not by much, honestly. And what I recall, which isn't much, is that my wife and I started arguing about something. Neither of us remembers what we were fighting about. What we do remember is that we were getting louder and louder, more and more aggressive, until I thought we were going to wake up our daughters. Oh, it's so beautiful here. I love it in New Zealand. I could still vaguely see my wife getting right in my face, screaming at the top of her lungs. I remember putting my right hand over her mouth to keep her quiet. I put my left hand behind her neck, and I remember just tackling her to the bed and her getting up and running out of the room. After a few minutes, I passed out on the bed. I woke up to 3 policemen, guns drawn, ready to take me to jail. And that is what my version of the story, at least, is what I recollect. And then my wife, however, remembers a much different story. She said I grabbed her by the throat. She said I picked her up off the floor and started to choke her. She told me she thought she was going to die. She said I threw her on the bed before she was finally able to run out of the room, gasping for air. Terrified, she grabbed our daughters and fled the house. Once she felt safe, she called the police and found me passed out on the bed. So, which story is the truth, mine or hers? I had no idea. All I knew in my alcohol-deadened mind was that I was angry, not at myself. I was still in denial, so far too wrapped up in my own ego to imagine I could ever be fully responsible for anything. I was angry at my wife, sitting in the back of the police car with my hands zip-tied behind my back. I couldn't figure out what I had done that was so bad. I hadn't hit her or choked her. It wasn't even close to as bad as what I'd seen my dad do to my mom. I clearly remember thinking this even with my face smushed against the plexiglass partition of the police car. I was completely wrong, of course. My addicted, in denial mind was working overtime. When the police booked me, they showed me photos of my wife, and covering her neck were violent red marks that I had done, and finally understood I could have killed my wife and then the mother of my children. And just as quickly, I realized was now worse than my dad, a much more dangerous monster. You're probably thinking that this is when I started to turn things around. Surely you must be thinking this was my rock bottom, that I had finally realized I needed to stop being in denial and start addressing my out-of-control addiction. Alas, dear reader and dear viewer, you have too much faith in me. I was far from done. I stayed mad at my wife for a month. How could she do such a thing? I yelled out my fragile addicted ego. I'm a loving husband, a doting father to her children. You were drunk too, and you wouldn't stop screaming, is what I would say. I knew I was out of control, but I still couldn't stop drinking. I kept drinking for another year. I finally hit bottom during another heavy drinking trip, and this time it was to Canada. My wife and I went on whiskey drinking tour with some friends. I really didn't want to go. I was already getting tired of drinking. In fact, I went an entire month without drinking before the trip. It made me feel really amazing, but I agreed to go. It was a disaster. I was blacking out and hitting on women in front of my wife. I was so disrespectful and so careless. At the end of my trip, my wife told me she was done with me. I knew that point she meant it. On the flight home, I had a Bloody Mary, which is still the last drink of alcohol I've ever had, and that was nearly 4 years ago. As I share this with you, we're getting divorced. She hasn't told me she loves me since that trip, which I fully understand. During 10 years of marriage, all my wife did was love me, take great care of our children, make us tons of money, and in turn, due to my alcohol addiction, what I later learned was an unconscious love addiction. All I did was traumatize her by sneaking around behind her back until she finally had enough of me and my crap. Today, I live alone in San Diego, and though I share joint custody of our girls, now ages 8 and 10, I see in them the same signs of anxiety and stress that I experienced as a scared little boy in my father's house. No person in their right mind would do what I did. The alcohol matrix is now part of this, but here's the thing. I wasn't in my right mind. I was hardly conscious, I was addicted, and I was unconscious. I was blind to my own terrible behavior and my crippling dependency. I was in the full grasp of the ugly and insidious and life-destroying lies alcohol and alcohol culture tells us about drinking. I was caught in what I call the alcohol matrix, which is the collective unconscious force deep within us that says alcohol benefits us in some way. When I finally had my awakening after many years of drinking, I had a lucid dream about alcohol. I was on a hard hospital gurney with alcohol being pumped into me through multiple tubes. As far as my eye could see, there was an endless number of people in the same condition as me. They were all hooked up to tubes, of alcohol, except my eyes were open and the other people were all still closed eyes and asleep. Everyone else was alone, but I was surrounded by a motley crew of alcohol matrix marketeers. George Clooney in a tux, looking dapper as ever, with a shot of Casa Amigos tequila in hand, a Guinness toucan raising a pint to my health, a French sommelier presenting a bottle of Bordeaux, two gorgeous bikini-clad girls sipping Coors Lights, and the three Budweiser frogs croaking Bud-Wise. Beyond them stood a couple of alcohol marketing executives in their suits. As I squirmed in fear and rage, trying to get the tubes out of me, I could hear them talking to one another. George looked down at me and said, "It looks like he's waking up." The others chimed in, "Don't let him. Give him some more. Dustin, you can't live a fun, sexy life without it. It's good for you. Just put the tubes back in. It will take the edge off. No one else is going to live alcohol-free with you, Dustin." I stood up on the gurney and I ripped the tubes out of me. "Get the hell away from me," I shouted. I woke up in a sweat, but finally fully awake. The concept of the alcohol matrix came to me from that dream. A month after the dream, I was reading a book titled The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober by Catherine Gray. She says, there's a jaw-dropping scene in the film The Matrix, which sums up, for me, how it feels to unplug from our alcohol-centric society. It is a swooping sci-fi shot that shows an endless field of people plugged into a fake reality. I was beyond shocked that she and I had had the same revelation. Long before any of us were even alive, the alcohol matrix was spinning its lies. And as a child, years before you took your first sip of alcohol, you were already being conditioned to believe those lies. Throughout human history, alcohol has been the most accessible painkiller known to man. It has also been consumed in celebration for every major life event in nearly every culture, from parties and weddings to religious rituals and funerals. And thanks to the alcohol matrix, we've all been brainwashed to believe alcohol, literally ethanol, is totally safe to consume. That rather than getting us sick or ruining our lives, alcohol is actually good for us. You and I have been brainwashed to believe alcohol is the secret to being cool, attractive, fun, and carefree. I knew better, and you knew better, but you and I continue to drink, primarily because of our collective belief that alcohol benefits us in some way. Even though we were fully aware of the damage alcohol does to our personal and professional lives, and study after study that proves alcohol causes cancer and 200 other diseases, every time we raise a glass of alcohol to our lips, there's a part of us deep down that knows we're doing something unhealthy, stupid, and self-destructive. It might just be a tiny little voice in the back of our head, but it's there, nagging at us. That little voice is now waking up from the alcohol matrix. You're starting to see how profound it is. Once you see it fully, you'll realize it's an absolute monster. And it's everywhere. It's influencing you unconsciously. It's telling you how to behave, what's expected of you. Get together with loved ones, and the alcohol matrix sets unspoken rules. Host or attend a social gathering, and the alcohol matrix shapes our actions in numerous ways. Is an ancient, unconscious, powerful social signal that we turn into without question. Think about how many times you've either said or heard someone say the following: "You deserve a drink to take the edge off. Just one won't hurt." Or, "Come on, it's beer o'clock." You know deep down alcohol is bad for you. Science has proven it is bad for you. Unfortunately, you've continued to drink it because you've continued to believe these and other lies the alcohol matrix tells you, just like I did. Drink me, your life will have less pain. Drink me, you'll have more friends, more money, better party, more sex, a nicer car, a better body, more laughs. You'll look cool, sophisticated, and classy. Drink me. You'll be funnier. Drink me. People will like you more. It goes on and on and on. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You can feel it, just like I did. You might not be able to explain it, but you can sense a dark side to the emphasis everyone seems to place on drinking. Maybe you've always noticed it, or perhaps you just started to see it recently. Maybe you're finally starting to notice how things could and should actually be. Right now, this creeping realization might still just be a tiny little voice in the back of your head. Listen to that voice, because it's telling you the truth. It's trying to show you what's real. It's trying to remind you about who you truly are. It took me far too long to listen to this voice because I failed to heed its warning. I hurt everyone, almost everyone I loved, and nearly threw away everything I valued the most. After suffering through an unbelievable and unbelievably long amount of pain, I finally started to listen to this voice, which kicked off a remarkable process of personal transformation and a radical shift in consciousness. Consciousness is everything. That I will grind into you. The truth is, alcohol is addictive. Anyone, and I mean anyone, who consumes enough of it will become addicted to it, just as anyone would taking any other addictive substance. Whether it's tobacco, or heroin, Vicodin, or Oxycontin, some people get hooked faster than others. Maybe you were introduced to alcohol earlier in life when alcohol susceptibility peaks. Maybe you were born into a heavy drinking family like I was, in which addiction is practically protocol. Maybe you're like the 70% of heavy drinkers who experience childhood trauma and to alleviate the pain, self-medicate with alcohol. Regardless, anyone has the potential to become addicted to alcohol once they consume enough of it. Just like me, here are some more truths. You are not the problem. Alcohol is. You are not allergic to alcohol. You don't have an addictive personality. You don't have the alcohol gene or alcoholic gene. You are not defective. You don't need to drink. I know this is probably hard to believe, but it's the truth, and it's time you accepted it. Don't make the same mistake that I did and think that if you get all the external things you dreamed of, everything, sitting in New Zealand, snow skiing, all these things flying around in your life, they will give you peace. External things and accomplishments come and go. What has made me truly peaceful and joyous is to become completely cured of alcohol addiction and finally free of the alcohol matrix of lies, which has allowed me to grow spiritually from the inside out and begin the process of healing all the broken parts of myself that broke apart my life. I've now been alcohol-free for almost 4 years, and it's taken me to do all this process. I am not sober. Sober means somber, subdued, sedate, quiet. I am none of those things at my truest essence, nor am I an alcoholic. I'm a joyous, alcohol-free man. In The Art of War, Sun Tzu advises us to know our enemy, and man, did I ever get to know my enemy. Over the past 4 years, I've read, researched, and studied some of the brightest experts and theories on addiction. I pored over every study and every cultural account of alcohol I could find to figure out why and how it became the elixir of adult life, a constant at every party and every important milestone. I've read and reread books about addiction and recovery that resonated most with me. I've repeated statistics and facts about alcohol over and over again as if they were my personal mantra. I've also had a lot of therapy, tons of therapy. Besides attending weekly sessions, I attend a love addiction program based on a 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is really ironic because AA didn't do anything to help me at all with my alcohol addiction. Believe me, I'll have more on this later in other videos. Slowly but surely, the chains of my alcohol addiction are gone, and my fear of abandonment is now healed. Thank God. I am living my life peacefully and on my own terms without the need to grasp for any external substance or any readily available person in a futile attempt to make myself feel better or loved. I am grateful, and I am present, and I am complete. Remember to ask questions, subscribe, and click the bell, and visit wearetheafr.org so you stay involved. The God in me recognizes, honors, and loves the God in you.